What's going on, gamers? We had an interesting video here by IGN called The Pros and Cons of Holding Back the PS6 Next Gen Console Watch. There's one interesting fact that they shared in here, and they go through the life cycles between the PS1, the PS2, which is actually like 5 years or something, and then PS2 to PS3, which is kind of like barely six, and then PS3 to PS4, which is like 7 years, and then you think about PS4 to PS5, it's kind of like 7 years. And then thinking about like delaying the PS6 because of this generation all the way to almost 2029, and that'll be the longest like window in console history. It becomes interesting, and about how the Magnus is not really needed even anytime soon, as if the PS5 is going to last longer, that's a huge base for Microsoft to focus on top of having Steam and a Nintendo Switch 2 base growing up trying to reach its 100 million too. So Microsoft could really stay relevant with the Xbox brand as a strong publisher. But as far as hardware goes, it's kind of rough. So we got some interesting stuff here to get into. Let me know what you guys think. As usual, like, comment, subscribe. Let's go. Let's see. Yeah, it's 1080p. Okay. Let's
Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Max Scoville, host of Podcast Beyond, and Ryan McCaffrey, host of Podcast Unlocked. And this week we're discussing a recent analyst report that suggests Sony may push the launch of the PlayStation 6 beyond 2028 and lengthen the PlayStation 5 lifecycle. David Gibson, senior analyst at MST International, who focuses on game and tech companies, published a report giving insights into the Sony Group's current performance and potential next moves. According to Gibson, Sony's earnings for the third quarter are expected to exceed forecasts, with strong sales of first and third-party games driving growth. So things are going very well for PlayStation right now. Gibson said, Sony expects the PS5 lifecycle to be longer than that of previous console generations, adding there's a high likelihood that the PS6 launch will occur after 2028. So I guess 2029 at the earliest. Gibson also observed that, quote,
So Gibson was saying to him, because I was thinking like the sweet spot will be late 2028. I never thought 2027 was realistic to begin with. He's saying it may go beyond that into 2029. I'm thinking if that's the case, it might be early or summer. So I'm completely fine with that because we've already discussed why that's a problem with the Unreal Engine 5, the COVID nonsense, the unoptimized nonsense, the cancels. It's like you didn't get what you deserved. You didn't get the optimization that you deserve. So everybody's okay with that. But yeah, it's still interesting seeing that.
PS5 user activity continues to set all-time record highs according to usage data. Sony is focusing more on retaining active users than expanding hardware sales.
Yeah.
So for context, the PS1 generation lasted 6 years in between PS1 and PS2 here in the US. PS2 was only 5 years. PS3 was 7 years, and PS4 was also 7 years.
Yeah, see?
So PS6 were released in 2029. That would be 9 years since the launch of the PS5. So Max, does that seem that surprising to you?
Given the current state of everything getting more expensive and just the, geopolitical everything, it's not surprising. I'm actually a little bit optimistic about this. If this is the case, I think it's great news because realistically, looking at what's going on in the world of gaming right now, what games are struggling to make use of the PS5? Like what games are bumping into the ceiling and being like, we need more power here? I mean, I think this is an incredible machine. And if it's not, there's also the PS5 Pro. But the biggest complaint we've leveled at the PS5 Pro is that there's nothing that really takes full advantage of it. There's nothing that's really blowing us away there. And obviously there's you can always improve graphics. You can always bump things up a bunch. But I think what's great about a longer console life cycle is it gives developers more time to get a feel for how you make games for it, to really optimize it, to take full advantage of the technology. And, you only grow the size of the install base, which means more people are going to play these games. And I think looking back historically, the best games for any given console generation, more likely than not, come out at the tail end of that console generation. Looking at, just last gen, we had the Last of Us Part 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, Ghost of Tsushima were all at the tail end of the PS4. Mm-hmm. The PS3 had The Last of Us. Going back to the PS2, God of War 2 came out after the PS3 was already out. You've got, classics like Chrono Trigger that are butting up against the launch of the N64 over on Super Nintendo. I think there's really no downside for developers having more time to play with a particular set of hardware like this. And, frankly, I know it's a show about hardware, about consoles and everything, but they're a means to an end. And the end is playing cool video games. And I just assume play more cool video games. And if Sony wants to sell new hardware, I think they also have the opportunity to make the PS5 even smaller. It's not like it could get much bigger. And they could also take a page out of the Switch's book and look at making sort of a portable iteration of it, which we've heard rumblings of. I'm not in a hurry to get a PS6, and I don't really think anyone else should be. And I mean, it's, again, that feels like a long ways off. It definitely would be, the longest gap between PlayStation releases, but we don't really need it,
Yeah,
that was well said. He had a lot of good points there. And one of the ones that I like is realizing that even these specifications that you have on the base PlayStation 5, you need to learn how to fully optimize for that. And saying that when you look at these other generations, nobody never really thought about that back then. You just wanted a really good video game. And you were blown away about what the PS3 could do even in those days. It starts to get more and more to this point in time where the diminishing returns are much more higher than before. And Sean Layden has said it, and so has plenty of others, that you're never going to see that jump again like you saw from PS1 to PS2 and PS2 to PS3. Like, it's hard to see that again. Now it's about, like, getting all these extra ray tracing effects, getting over 60 frames. Now people are talking about, give me my 120 or 90 or 80. It's like, after you get your 60, you're okay, trust me. So, like, at that point, and Layden said this as well, you're going to need something more than power when it comes to the PS6. And now more than ever in this market, and just like the financial crisis that the common hole is dealing with, they're looking for something more than power and a reason to upgrade. And now people are more, money saving oriented than ever, because that's just the way real life conditions are. And like I said, it gets to a point now to where when you think about how everything looks good now, every game looks good now. There's no such thing as like, oh my God, it's like, no, everything looks good now. So what would be the reason to upgrade right now? No, Sony needs to make people hungry for the PS6, and they need to do it the right way. So I agree with him on that. Learn to master that console first and show that there's no such thing as a game coming out that's completely buggy, full of stutter. And it's not just including PlayStation. PC got all these ports too, and PC aspects were having some problems with AI upscaling. There's too much of that. And then when you have stuff like loading shaders, why am I waiting 3-4 minutes to load shaders? What's with that DirectX 12 nonsense? You know what I mean? Well, why is all this stuff popping up with better technology? All that stuff needs to be canned out. Unreal Engine 5 needs to be way better. It was a huge problem the whole generation. So it's like, yeah, I mean, we really need that to be steady, because that's what everybody's using to save money. Who complains about that too? So that needs to be the most optimized then.
I agree with you, and I don't think there's much of an appetite from Sony fans for a PlayStation 6 right now, for all the reasons that you said.
No, only hardcore.
By my count, there's still over 100 games coming to PlayStation 4 this year, and that we know of right now. And by my estimate, about 75% of the PlayStation 5's library can be played on the PS4. So there's still very few reasons why you would absolutely have to have a PS5. But Ryan, things are different for Xbox. Its hardware sales have bottomed out, of course, but it's also finding great success being a third-party publisher.
Yeah.
And we've heard rumors about how their next console is going to be much more open, like a PC. So I don't know. How do you think Xbox is looking at what the right time is to launch the next generation Xbox?
Well, for those reasons, I would say that Xbox has a little more incentive to get something new out the door. Now, it's not a new thing. A new piece of hardware isn't going to solve their brand issues. But there's kind of nowhere for them to go but up in terms of excitement for the brand from here. So if they pull off what I guess we can now sort of say a Steam machine-like open PC console that runs Xbox games via Windows, that can play, it can connect to Steam, it can connect to Epic Game Store, etc. That leaves room for Microsoft to generate a little bit more interest, a little bit more buzz, and the Steam machine will already be out there. I mean, that thing's coming. We don't quite know when. We thought it might already be any minute now, and we haven't gotten the date yet as of this taping.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think Microsoft is in more of a position to get something out the door sooner. Now, is it going to make a material difference in how the games look and perform? Yeah. Maybe not a material one. It'll make a difference, but I wonder if at least in the early going, assuming that Microsoft does ship their next piece of hardware before Sony ships a PlayStation 6, if we almost kind of might be looking at a PS5 Pro-like situation where it is a more powerful piece of hardware and it will run things better, but not in any sort of I need to run out and buy this right now kind of way, because it'll remain to be seen what games take full advantage of it. I mean, Microsoft is shipping a ton of games these days, and that's all we've really ever wanted from them since they stopped doing that in the Xbox One era. But and if those games do run best on the next Xbox, well, that's certainly a plus. But I think even Microsoft won't be sorry to see the PS5 stick around, not even for competitive reasons, but for, as you were saying, Damon, they're having a ton of success shipping their games on PS5. And so if there's a, whatever it is, however many tens of millions or before too long, maybe even 100 million PS5 owners out there that Microsoft can sell their first party games to, they're going to be perfectly content to do that.
Do you think, Max, there's any...
Yeah, I mean, well said. What he just said, like when it comes to the Magnus, it's the same thing again. When people think about the PS5 Pro, they're just going to have GTA aspects. It's, do I need this? Because this is just more power again. But now more than ever, the price range of what you think when you think about the Xbox consoles, we were thinking 500 was like, ooh, for the Series X, but the deal was good. The Magnus is going to be like $1,500. Nobody is going to really buy that. And the position that their brand is in, and they don't have a huge trust with the gaming industry compared to what they used to in the 360 era, that is a serious price out. And it may be more money than that. So now more than ever, people will be like, I would rather get a PS5 Pro. That install base is good. I already have a PC. I don't need that. I don't want to be forced to use Windows 11. And that's way too expensive. I don't need that. You know what I mean? I would rather just play on the settings that are on the PS5 Pro, because it's about to get PSSR 2 as well. And I'd rather stick to my PC that I have as well, too. Some people may be running a lot of Linux PCs as well. That's the thing when it comes to that. Some people might just want to stay on their Steam and say, no, I could just play your stuff on Steam already on a good PC. It's a tough sell. Microsoft's going to have to find some way. And that's when I realized that I don't know about the Xbox Magnus. You know what I mean? It's a big question mark when it comes to, like, what is kind of the point of it? Now, definitely with the way PC gaming is at the moment, how ridiculously expensive it is and how it can surge up even more later on in this year. You see what I mean? So it's like, it's a big question, but what is not a big question is Microsoft being a strong publisher on PlayStation, on the Switch 2, and on Steam, and making sure that is the most important thing they do. Satya made that clear. Amy Hood made that clear. Nobody's really talking about the Magnus over there. I haven't said much to it because it may be in question to maybe not happen, or maybe it will. I'm not going to say, either or. You never know when it comes to Microsoft, because they have different priorities compared to Sony's position in the gaming industry and Nintendo's, and what's more important for their company and how much of a percentage that matters for their company compared to Microsoft's, which makes way more outside of gaming and it's nowhere near as relevant. So if you're thinking about that and they're thinking about profit margins, it's like, then it's not really the Magnus that is going to get us that, because it's not going to sell that much. It's in a Steam Deck situation, a Steam Machine situation. A Steam Machine, I think, will sell more than that. It is more about how successful can you be selling millions and making microtransaction millions and billions on all these platforms and all these devices simultaneously. That's their best bet. Everything else, I think they're kind of just too nerfed in the hardware. The ROG Ally showed you that too. It's like, it only gets worse if you notice. Xbox One to Xbox Series to the Ally, it just tanks down more and more and more, and it's not getting better. And it's not something that we wanted. This is called talking about what's happening in reality. So what are you left with? Being a strong publisher, and everybody knows this. So that just makes you question the Magnus and its attractiveness. I don't think it's going to be that attractive. The PS6 will be attractive, but Sony just needs to get that window right when it comes to time and execution, and I think they will. And there's going to be some appeal to it that I know that's more than power, because Sony's very good at doing that. So that's kind of like my take on that.
Any chance that PlayStation would be sort of taking a wait and see approach to see what Xbox actually does with its next console?
They certainly have the luxury of doing that, but also they put out their Pro. Like they've already put their weird half-gen refresh, and I don't have access to sales data on that, but just anecdotally based on everyone I've talked to and everything we've seen about it, anyone who spent the money to pick one up is like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not a must-have device, and we haven't really seen any games take full advantage of that. To Ryan's point about the opening up to different storefronts, the Steam machine of it all, the rumors we heard about whatever the next Xbox is, I think it's going to be less of a hardware thing and more about how people are using this thing that's going to be the real selling point. And in Xbox's case, if it means opening it up to Windows gamers, or just really making it so it's a kind of a storefront agnostic device, that's a pretty huge swing. And that honestly, that makes me kind of interested in that device. Meanwhile, if Sony were to come along with a thing that's comparably powered to the PS5, but it's got the portability of a Switch or a Steam Deck, that's also appealing, but in a completely different way. I just feel like we've reached this point with the actual performance of the hardware that it's pretty much diminishing returns, and there's not really a huge benefit to just kind of make it this arms race of trying to have more realistic pores on photorealistic CGI people.
So, Ryan, we've been talking about how we're not in any rush for a PlayStation 6. There's been a very long transition period from PS4 to PS5, and we're not really seeing games that are pushing the PS5 to its absolute limit yet. Do you feel the same way about your Xbox Series X, or are you more excited to get new Xbox hardware?
No, I do feel the same way. And in fact, you both kind of bring up another maybe reason to root for this generation to go on a bit longer, and that is the long development cycles on big AAA games. Yeah. They've only gotten longer and longer and longer. We were just doing a podcast this week on Unlocked of the top 100 Xbox games of all time. Big list that we put together with our friends at Outside Xbox. And those games all, yes, it was a couple generations ago, but they all took 5 years, or in most cases, a lot less than 5 years. And so now with Series X and PS5 games taking 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get done, do we really want new hardware anytime soon that's probably only, well, yes, theoretically gonna offer us more technological bells and whistles, but only going to lengthen the development times? I'm not sure any of us are necessarily in a hurry to wait upwards now of a decade for a big AAA game. So that could be another sort of half secret reason, I should say, to root for an extension of this generation, is to keep development times shorter than they would be on PS6 and the next Xbox.
Yeah, if Fable does finally come out this fall, it'll be 6 years since it was just announced. Certainly development probably started before that. So yeah, maybe it is time. Maybe the time of the 5 or 6 year console generation, maybe it's fine that time is over. Okay, so January been pretty slow for new game releases, but things are about to heat up in February. So we want to know, what February game are you most excited about? Dragon.
Well, there we have it. We covered that subject. You guys let me know if you want to add in anything to this. It pretty much covers, I think, what everybody is thinking. The relevancy of the Magnus, the relevancy of the PlayStation 6, the relevancy of the Xbox brand, and the relevancy of PS5 having an extended life cycle to give people what they need. All that stuff is important. So yeah, leave some comments down below as usual. All right, y'all, peace out, keep gaming, no matter what platform you're on.